This morning, we are having a conversation with the Honorable Marvin Gonzales, Minister of Public Utilities, and we're chatting a little bit about the new WASA water schedules and the ban on water hoses across the nation. Good morning to you, Minister.
Good morning, Rokas. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
How are you doing this morning?
Good. Had a very busy weekend, busy week last week. A little bit exhausted, but that's...
Well, I imagine there's lots going on, especially now that we're in the dry season, and a lot of things would have to be put in place to make sure that we have water to supply the nation. Of course, we've been seeing the notices issued by WASA.
Yes.
We saw a ban on using water indiscriminately. We saw a ban on fountain use. We saw a ban on lots of interesting things.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how it's set up. How is it set up to make, all right, what do we do to conserve water, and how do we decide what we cutting off and what we're telling people to stop using?
Right. I think it will be very important to start from a contextual perspective. Why the imposition? Because a lot of people might be asking, why do we have water scheduling or water restrictions
we live on an island, man.
during the dry season? Yes, you're absolutely right. We live on an island, but water must be managed and must be managed efficiently. Why is, yes, we are surrounded by the ocean. Most of our water sources do not come from
the ocean.
Desalination or from the ocean. As a matter of fact, a lot of Caribbean countries would have invested a lot in desalination plants because, unlike Trinidad and Tobago, they do not have access to rivers and underground aquifers. So in Trinidad and Tobago, 60% of our water comes from surface water sources, rivers, rural intakes, streams, etc. 60%. Most of them are located in East Trinidad. Then you have 30% or 25% from groundwater sources like your wells, and then you have about another 20% or 25% from desalination water. That's two large desalination plants in Point Fortin, producing 5 million gallons of water, and in central Trinidad, Point Lisas, producing approximately 40 million gallons of water once it is producing water at optimal capacity. So let's go to our surface water sources. During the dry season, of course, they are impacted because your rivers do not flow at that maximum rate. They dwindle quite significantly. And therefore, the amount of water that is available to WASA during the dry season, it drops considerably, and that water is no longer available. So that 60% is no longer available, and therefore, as less water becomes available to the utility company, it now has to engage in what you call water rationing or water restriction, so as to equitably distribute the water as far and as best as possible to communities. So this year, at this point in time, WASA does not have 18 million gallons of water that normally it will have in rainy season conditions because the dryness would have started very early. So 18 million gallons of water is quite a lot of water not being available to the authority. And then the desalination company is producing below its contracted capacity because they themselves are having their own challenges with the dry season conditions. The water in the ocean is more, the salinity level is higher, and therefore it undermines the capacity of the desalination company. So they are producing about 2 or 3 million gallons of water less, not the full.
Less than they would have.
Yes. So you have WASA facing its challenges. These things are quite normal in dry season conditions. So what WASA is forced to do, as they are doing right now, is to impose restrictions whereby communities do not get water in accordance with schedules that they enjoyed before.
Right.
So if your water schedule is 3 days a week, you will get it twice per week. Or if it's 5 or 6 days per week, you can perhaps get it 3 days per week, and what have you. Unfortunately, communities located on the extremities, those are communities that exist far away from WASA's main distribution system. They tend to be impacted a lot because it takes quite a lot of water on a sustained level with sustained pressure to get water to those endpoints. So those communities tend to be impacted unduly. So what we have done is that we first, WASA imposed these restrictions from use of water hoses, power washers, asking customers to engage in conservation practices, fixing your leaking taps, your leaking tanks, limiting the amount of water. If you're showering, you turn off the shower when you're, soaping and what have you. When you're washing your dishes, you turn off the taps when you're doing certain things. So once customers do their part in conservation, it means that the utility company can also conserve millions of gallons of water that can now be utilized to serve unserved and underserved communities.
But of course, we know every little bit counts. So every time we help the situation, we do a little bit more to make it better. But tell me, are these restrictions only for your residential customers, or these apply to your commercial customers
Commercial customers, everyone.
Okay.
All of the restrictions are across the board. Persons who do have car washing businesses, for example, of course, they can't, based on these restrictions, cannot utilize the use of hose to wash those cars.
Okay.
So they have to now put their water into containers or buckets to be able to. So all of these things save the utility companies.
This applies even if they have like a tank system. So if they have a tank that's storing the water that they're using,
of course, and that's what they do. They can store their water in the tanks, but they still cannot utilize the hose, because the tank level is going to drop considerably if you use hose as opposed to utilizing a bucket.
Okay.
So if the water is stored in your storage tanks and you utilize your bucket, you can wash quite a lot of vehicles by the use of these receptacles.
Tell me something. Does this apply to sporting grounds as well? And so, because I know like golf fields, cricket fields, football fields, they would all need to be watered, especially in the dry season, because they don't want the turf to be mashed up.
Absolutely.
So does it apply to them as well in terms of not using hose? They use bucket to sprinkle water too?
Yes, so sprinklers cannot be utilized during and unfortunately, some of those facilities, the quality of the surface could become impacted. So there are no exceptions to the rule during these drought-like conditions. Now, there are some sporting facilities, like, for example, the Queen's Park Oval. They have their own private wells to maintain their facilities. So a lot of people don't know that. So, but those restrictions obviously do not apply to them because they utilize their own wells that they have.
I was under the impression that people, individuals, commercial entities couldn't own surface water. WASA
not surface, groundwater. So you can apply to WASA for an abstraction license to abstract water from a nearby watercourse in order to irrigate your crops, your lives. Of course, and you have a lot of farmers with abstraction license. The authority grants abstraction licenses to farmers and people who engage in poultry farming, etc., to be able to extract water from a surface water to be able to undertake the agricultural activities. And then you have not companies, but private entities, sporting organizations with their own playing or recreational facility. They can get a license to drill their own wells to maintain their facility. You have a number of commercial companies as well that have their own licenses.
Okay.
It all depends on the nature of the business, where they require their own source of water, and there are procedures under the WASA Act that they can apply.
How do swimming pools fall into this?
Well, swimming pools, it means that if you're a residential customer and you have your swimming pool, of course you're extracting or you're consuming large volumes of water to fill that pool. You're not utilizing a hose or what have you. But most of these customers are metered, and they pay a metered rate
accordingly
for the water that they consume. And that's the benefit of metering, because in that instance, consumers pay for what they consume. And if you don't consume water, of course, you will not be paying. So if WASA does not provide a water schedule, you don't pay for it, because the meter will indicate that you did not have a supply of water. Yeah.
Nice. Now, Minister, we only have a few minutes left, and I really want to touch on something that we would have spoken about off air, which is that about a month ago, there was an approval given by the government for $160 million towards improving, is it the water
the Community Water Improvement Program.
Yes.
So this program, as you know, I would have spoken about it a lot on this program, that improve the supply of water to many communities.
And it's been a work in progress.
It's a work in progress, being rolled out. Communities getting water for the very first time in many instances. 200,000 citizens benefiting. And because of the benefit of this program to provide water relief to many communities, the government has approved the sum of $160 million to allow WASA and the Ministry of Public Utilities to continue to roll out these water improvement projects in communities all over Trinidad and Tobago. So we are targeting places like Granville and Cedras, Mayaro, Moruga, Palo Seco, Bennett, parts of central Trinidad, Siparia and Pinal. We want to continue drilling wells in the Freeport area, in Barrackpore, and in East Trinidad. We are also doing some well development program, improving the infrastructure and parts of Charlottesville in Tobago. So that $160 million is going to be spent on improving water infrastructure and the supply of water to some of those communities that I mentioned.
When can we expect to start seeing some of these projects getting up and underway?
Well, a lot of these projects have already been designed and are already in tender phases. They're already being rolled out as we speak in Cedras and Granville. The wells in Mayaro are already being drilled. And in a month, 2 months' time, a lot of pipeline upgrade works will be taking place in the Barrackpore, in St. Helena, and parts of Penal, what have you. So as we speak, those projects are already rolling out, but you're going to be seeing a ramp up of activities as we move towards progressing with the procurement process.
Now, generally, what is the lifespan of these wells that we drill in?
Some wells last for over 100 years, you know.
Yeah.
There are a lot of wells, for example, in the Savannah, in Diamond Vale, in Tucker Valley. Those wells are over 60 years old. These wells are not really rehabilitated, but you remember it's an underground aquifer.
So the water just refills.
The water refills from once you have rains. You know, they go through some of the cracks in the earth, the rocks and what have you, and they regenerate from time to time. So that's why you have to abstract at a reasonable amount in order to allow the well to regenerate. Depending. So they are impacted by dry season conditions, mind you. They are more resilient because the water is underground. But during the dry season, you cannot extract as much water as in the rainy season because you do not have that volume of surface water running off to regenerate.
Understood. Now, Minister, one of the things that I know people are going to ask, and I can already see, I'm not seeing the comments on Facebook, but I can see the comments on Facebook where they're saying that basically, you know, the WASA is asking us to do our part to conserve water. But driving to work this morning, I saw 3 different WASA leaks coming out of Marvin.
Yeah.
So it's difficult for as citizens for us to say, you know, we want to do our part, but then you come outside and you're seeing leaks all over. I know WASA has been doing work to do.
Quite a lot.
You fixed 2,000, it's over 2,000 leaks I saw
It
fixed in
started with
February.
5,000 and it is down under 1,000 right now.
As in left to fix? 1,000 left to fix or 1,000 that you fix?
Under 1,000 left to be fixed at this point in time. Of course, it's a target. Every day leaks appear on your distribution network because of age infrastructure. The amount of pressure that we have to put in our lines to get water to some of the communities who live on high elevation, that contributes a lot, especially in Northwest Trinidad, where most of your booster stations are located because you have so many communities living on hills. I mean, you stay in Port of Spain, you see the hills of Laventille, in Chancellor, in Diego Martin. It takes quite a lot of pressure to send water up to these high elevations, and therefore it results, unfortunately, in a lot of ruptures on your pipeline infrastructure. But that being said, WASA has done tremendous work in reducing its leak backlog from 5,000 to under 1,000. We hope for that to be eradicated in about a month's time or even less, so that when the leaks do appear and they will continue to appear. You can't change that. The utility company will be able to respond more efficiently to reduce the possibility of high losses on the system. So yes, you will be seeing leaks from time to time. It is something that we cannot escape. But what we have to do is to ensure, as we are doing now, that the utility company is placed in a position to be able to respond efficiently to those reports of leaks.
Nice. Well, Minister, let me thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing this update with us and making sure that hopefully people are a little bit more clear as to why the restrictions are in place and how they can do their part to be able to help WASA and the ministry by extension.
We all have our part to play.
Most definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Marvin Gonzales, the Minister of Public Utility, joining us here at the Now Morning Show to tell you, conserve water, be smart. We'll take a quick break and come back with more right here. Stay tuned.